The morning sun peeked through the blinds as Lisa checked her suitcase one last time. Everything was in perfect order, just the way she liked it. Her flight to San Francisco was scheduled for 2:30 p.m., giving her plenty of time to arrive at her sister's place before the rehearsal dinner that evening. As the maid of honor and unofficial wedding planner, she couldn't afford any hiccups. Tickets? Check. ID? Check. Bridesmaid dress? Check. She muttered to herself, running through her mental checklist while sipping her morning coffee. Lisa wasn't just organized, she was the kind of person who made spreadsheets for vacation packing and set 3 alarms for important days. Her friends often teased her about it, but today, her planning would be put to the ultimate test. 3 months earlier, she had booked her flight and even paid extra for premium seat selection, an aisle seat in the exit row with extra legroom. At $75 additional, it wasn't cheap, but for the 5-hour flight, it seemed worth every penny. She had even downloaded the airline's app to check in exactly 24 hours before departure, securing her boarding position in Group A. "The cab will be here in 10 minutes, she told her cat, Milo, who watched with judgment as she zipped up her carry-on bag. "Don't give me that look. Aunt Jenny will be over to feed you, and I'll be back before you know it." The ride to the airport was smooth with light Sunday traffic. Lisa arrived 3 hours early. Another habit her friends found amusing, but that always gave her peace of mind. She breezed through security with her TSA pre-check and found a quiet corner in the terminal to review her sister's wedding checklist one more time. "Everything's under control," she reassured herself, sending a quick text to her sister with a selfie from the airport. "Boarding in 2 hours. Can't wait to help with final touches tonight." Her sister replied immediately, "Thank goodness. Mom's driving me crazy with last-minute changes. Need you here ASAP." Lisa smiled, ordered an overpriced airport sandwich, and settled in with her tablet to review the seating chart for the reception. The terminal filled up gradually as departure time approached. She watched families with small children, business travelers tapping away on laptops, and a couple who were clearly honeymooning based on their matching just-married luggage tags. At the 1-hour mark, Lisa packed up her things and moved closer to the gate. The flight status showed on time, and she felt that familiar pre-trip excitement building. This wedding meant everything to her sister, who had postponed it twice during the pandemic. Now, finally, the big day was just around the corner. "We will now begin the boarding process for Flight 1372 to San Francisco," announced the gate agent, a tired-looking woman with perfectly styled hair. "Please have your boarding passes and identification ready." Lisa stood up, smoothed her blouse, and joined the line as Group A was called. She watched as first-class passengers boarded, followed by those needing special assistance. Then it was her turn. She approached the counter with confidence, handing over her boarding pass and ID with a smile. The gate agent's scanner made a harsh beeping sound instead of the usual pleasant chime. She frowned, scanned again, then looked up at Lisa with an expression that made her stomach drop. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be an issue with your SEAP assignment," the agent said, her voice lacking any real sympathy. "What do you mean?" "I checked in yesterday and got my boarding pass," Lisa replied, her heart beginning to race. The agent typed something into her computer, the clickety-clack of the keyboard feeling like tiny hammers on Lisa's nerves. "It appears your seat has been reassigned. The flight is overbooked, and unfortunately, you've been selected for rebooking." Lisa blinked, certain she had misheard. "That's impossible. I have a confirmed reservation. I paid extra for that specific seat." "I understand your frustration, but I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. The next flight to San Francisco departs tomorrow at 6 a.m. We can accommodate you then." The words hit Lisa like a bucket of ice water. Tomorrow? The rehearsal dinner was that evening. Her sister was counting on her. She had responsibilities, promises to keep. "This can't be happening," she whispered, as the reality of the situation began to sink in. "There must be some mistake," Lisa said, her voice rising slightly as other passengers shuffled past her toward the jet bridge. "I have a confirmation email. I paid extra for my seat. I checked in online yesterday." The gate agent's expression remained unmoved, as if she'd heard these exact words 1,000 times before. "I understand you're upset, ma'am, but the flight is overbooked, and your seat has been reassigned to another passenger." Lisa pulled out her phone with trembling hands and showed the agent her confirmation email. Look, right here. Seat 14C paid in full 3 months ago, plus the extra $75 for seat selection. Yes, I can see that in our system, the agent replied, glancing at her screen. However, airline policy allows us to overbook flights, and in this case, we needed your seat. A businessman in an expensive suit brushed past Lisa, boarding pass in hand. She noticed his ticket showed seat 14C, her seat. Her cheeks flushed hot with anger and embarrassment. Can I at least know why I was chosen to be bumped? I checked in online exactly 24 hours before the flight. The agent lowered her voice. It's an automated system decision based on various factors. I don't have access to the specific reason for your selection. Lisa felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, but took a deep breath to keep them at bay. She wouldn't cry, not here, not now. My sister's wedding rehearsal dinner is tonight. I'm the maid of honor. I have to be there. I'm sorry about your situation. We can offer you a $300 flight voucher and accommodation at the airport hotel. A voucher? I don't want a voucher. I need to get to San Francisco today. People in line behind her were getting restless, checking their watches and sighing loudly. A supervisor approached, a tall woman with graying hair, pulled tightly into a bun. Is there a problem here? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Lisa explained her situation again, this time pulling up photos of the bridesmaid dress, the seating charts she'd created, and the timeline for the wedding weekend. This isn't just any trip. My sister has been planning this wedding for 3 years after postponing twice during the pandemic. She's counting on me. The supervisor listened with a professional but distant expression. Let me check something, she said, typing rapidly on the computer. After a moment, she looked up. There's a flight to Oakland that leaves in an hour. You'd have to find transportation from Oakland to San Francisco, but it would get you to California today. Lisa felt a flicker of hope. Yes, that would work. Unfortunately, it's completely full as well, the supervisor continued. But we could put you on standby. There's also a flight to San Jose this evening with 2 seats available. San Jose? That's over an hour from San Francisco. It's the best we can do. The San Jose flight gets in at 11 p.m. local time. Lisa did the math in her head. The rehearsal dinner would be long over by then. She might be able to get a rental car and drive to her sister's place by midnight if everything went perfectly. Fine. Book me on the San Jose flight, she said, defeated. The supervisor nodded and began typing again. There will be an additional charge of $175 for the route change. What? You're making me pay extra because you gave away my seat. It's a different destination airport, which constitutes a new booking. I can waive the standard change fee, but the fare difference applies. Lisa stared in disbelief. Around her, the gate area was emptying as the final passengers boarded her original flight. Through the large windows, she could see the luggage being loaded into the cargo hold. Her checked bag was probably already on the plane. My suitcase? It's checked through to San Francisco. We'll reroute it to San Jose, the supervisor said, not looking up from her screen. Though there's a possibility it might still go to San Francisco. In that case, we'll deliver it to your final destination within 24 hours. Lisa pulled out her credit card, feeling utterly powerless. As she waited for the transaction to process, she watched her original flight begin to push back from the gate. This isn't right, she whispered to herself. This just isn't right. There must be some mistake, Lisa said, her voice rising slightly as other passengers shuffled past her toward the jet bridge. I have a confirmation email. I paid extra for my seat. I checked in online yesterday. The gate agent's expression remained unmoved, as if she'd heard these exact words 1,000 times before. I understand you're upset, ma'am, but the flight is overbooked, and your seat has been reassigned to another passenger. Lisa pulled out her phone with trembling hands and showed the agent her confirmation email. Look, right here. Seat 14C paid in full 3 months ago, plus the extra $75 for seat selection. Yes, I can see that in our system, the agent replied, glancing at her screen. However, airline policy allows us to overbook flights, and in this case, we needed your seat. A businessman in an expensive suit brushed past Lisa, boarding pass in hand. She noticed his ticket showed seat 14C, her seat. Her cheeks flushed hot with anger and embarrassment. Can I at least know why I was chosen to be bumped? I checked in online exactly 24 hours before the flight. The agent lowered her voice. It's an automated system decision based on various factors. I don't have access to the specific reason for your selection. Lisa felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, but took a deep breath to keep them at bay. She wouldn't cry, not here, not now. My sister's wedding rehearsal dinner is tonight. I'm the maid of honor. I have to be there. I'm sorry about your situation. We can offer you a $300 flight voucher and accommodation at the airport hotel. A voucher? I don't want a voucher. I need to get to San Francisco today. People in line behind her were getting restless, checking their watches and sighing loudly. A supervisor approached, a tall woman with graying hair pulled tightly into a bun. Is there a problem here? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Lisa explained her situation again, this time pulling up photos of the bridesmaid dress, the seating charts she'd created, and the timeline for the wedding weekend. This isn't just any trip. My sister has been planning this wedding for 3 years after postponing twice during the pandemic. She's counting on me. The supervisor listened with a professional but distant expression. Let me check something, she said, typing rapidly on the computer. After a moment, she looked up. There's a flight to Oakland that leaves in an hour. You'd have to find transportation from Oakland to San Francisco, but it would get you to California today. Lisa felt a flicker of hope. Yes, that would work. Unfortunately, it's completely full as well, the supervisor continued. But we could put you on standby. There's also a flight to San Jose this evening with 2 seats available. San Jose? That's over an hour from San Francisco. It's the best we can do. The San Jose flight gets in at 11 p.m. local time. Lisa did the math in her head. The rehearsal dinner would be long over by then. She might be able to get a rental car and drive to her sister's place by midnight if everything went perfectly. Fine. Book me on the San Jose flight, she said, defeated. The supervisor nodded and began typing again. There will be an additional charge of $175 for the route change. What? You're making me pay extra because you gave away my seat. It's a different destination airport, which constitutes a new booking. I can waive the standard change fee, but the fare difference applies. Lisa stared in disbelief. Around her, the gate area was emptying as the final passengers boarded her original flight. Through the large windows, she could see the luggage being loaded into the cargo hold. Her checked bag was probably already on the plane. My suitcase. It's checked through to San Francisco. We'll reroute it to San Jose, the supervisor said, not looking up from her screen. Though there's a possibility it might still go to San Francisco. In that case, we'll deliver it to your final destination within 24 hours. Lisa pulled out her credit card, feeling utterly powerless. As she waited for the transaction to process, she watched her original flight begin to push back from the gate. This isn't right, she whispered to herself. This just isn't right. The wedding went beautifully despite everything. Lisa managed to borrow a dress that almost matched the other bridesmaids, and her luggage finally arrived at her sister's house late that night, after all the festivities were over. When her sister and new brother-in-law left for their honeymoon, Lisa hugged them goodbye, then headed back to her hotel room with her laptop. Time to get to work, she muttered to herself, spreading out all her notes on the hotel desk. First, she wrote a detailed complaint letter to the airline, stating exactly what had happened and requesting compensation for the missed event, additional expenses, and emotional distress. She included copies of her original booking confirmation, receipts for the extra seat selection fee, and photos of her boarding pass. 2 weeks later, she received a form letter response with another $300 flight voucher. The letter didn't even address her specific situation, just referenced unforeseen operational circumstances and standard company policy. Not good enough, Lisa said to her empty living room as she read the letter. She picked up her phone and dialed the airline's customer service number, prepared to spend her entire evening on hold if necessary. After an hour and 17 minutes of waiting music and automated messages assuring her that her call was important, She finally reached a human being. "I'd like to speak to a supervisor," Lisa said immediately. "May I ask what this is regarding?" the representative asked. "I was wrongfully bumped from a flight despite having a confirmed reservation and having checked in 24 hours in advance. I've already submitted a written complaint and received an inadequate response." After another 20 minutes on hold, a supervisor came on the line. "I understand you're unhappy with our resolution," he began. "Unhappy doesn't begin to cover it," Lisa replied. "I missed my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner because your airline gave away my seat that I had paid for months in advance." The supervisor's voice remained calm and detached. "According to our records, you were offered compensation in line with Department of Transportation guidelines. Those guidelines are for voluntary bumping. I didn't volunteer, and the voucher doesn't cover my additional expenses or the fact that I missed an irreplaceable life event. I'm afraid that's the maximum compensation we can offer for this situation." Lisa took a deep breath. "Then I'd like to know exactly why I was selected for involuntary bumping when I had a confirmed reservation and had checked in on time." There was a pause on the line. "That information is determined by our proprietary algorithm and isn't something we can discuss with passengers." "Proprietary algorithm?" Lisa repeated. "So you're telling me there's a secret formula that decides whose plans get ruined, and you won't tell customers what factors are considered?" "It's standard industry practice," the supervisor replied. "I can assure you that multiple factors are taken into account to make these decisions as fair as possible." After getting nowhere with the supervisor, Lisa turned to social media. She posted her story on every platform, including detailed timelines and copies of her correspondence with the airline. To her surprise, her inbox began filling with messages from other passengers who had experienced similar situations. One message in particular caught her attention. It was from someone claiming to be a former employee of the airline. "What they won't tell you," the message read, "is that the system flags certain types of bookings for bumping first. People who got discount fares, people who don't have elite status, and especially people traveling to events like weddings or family gatherings. Business travelers are almost never bumped because they're repeat customers." Lisa stared at the message in disbelief. Could the airline really be deliberately targeting certain types of passengers? She responded to the message, asking for more information. The former employee agreed to talk by phone, but wanted to remain anonymous. "I worked in their operations department for 7 years, the person explained. About 3 years ago, they installed new software that uses passenger data to rank people for potential bumping. The system actually gives lower priority to people traveling for special occasions because they've determined those passengers are less likely to be frequent flyers." Lisa was stunned. "That's horrible and completely unfair." "It gets worse," the former employee continued. "I can prove it exists." 2 days later, Lisa met the former employee at a quiet coffee shop downtown. The woman, who asked to be called Pat for the meeting, looked nervously around before sliding a thumb drive across the table. "I kept copies of internal memos and training materials before I left," Pat explained in a hushed voice. "The airline calls it their Priority Protection Protocol, but employees nicknamed it the Profit Protection Program because that's what it really is." Lisa inserted the thumb drive into her laptop and began scrolling through the files. Her eyes widened as she read internal communications about passenger value scoring and strategic seat reallocation. One document explicitly outlined how the algorithm assigned lower priority to passengers traveling for weddings, family events, and vacations, while protecting business travelers who were more likely to be frequent flyers. "This is unbelievable," Lisa whispered. "They're specifically targeting people on their way to important personal events." Pat nodded. "The system flags keywords in reservation notes. If you mentioned your sister's wedding when booking, that actually worked against you." Lisa remembered telling the booking agent exactly that. She was traveling for her sister's wedding and needed to arrive on time for the rehearsal dinner. "Is this even legal?" Lisa asked. "That's the thing, it operates in a gray area. Airlines are allowed to prioritize who gets bumped, but they're supposed to follow their published policies. If you look at their contract of carriage, it just says they use various factors to determine priority." Lisa spent the next 2 weeks reaching out to everyone who had contacted her through social media. She created a spreadsheet documenting over 50 cases of passengers being bumped from flights while traveling to weddings, funerals, graduations, and other significant life events. The pattern was undeniable. Her next step was contacting a consumer rights attorney. She found one who specialized in airline cases and sent her all the evidence she had collected. "This is fascinating," the attorney said during their first meeting. "Airlines have been overbooking flights for decades, but deliberately targeting emotional travelers? That's new territory." "What can we do about it?" Lisa asked. "We could file a class action lawsuit on behalf of all the affected passengers. The airline has violated its own contract of carriage by not disclosing these specific bumping criteria. And there might be discrimination issues here too, depending on how the algorithm works." Lisa hesitated. "A lawsuit would take years, wouldn't it?" "Most likely, but there's another angle we could try first." The attorney leaned forward with a smile. "How do you feel about talking to the media?" 3 days later, Lisa found herself sitting in a television studio, about to be interviewed live about her findings. Her hands trembled slightly as a makeup artist made final touches. "Don't worry," the producer assured her. "Just tell your story exactly like you told it to me. People need to hear this." The red light on the camera blinked on, and the host introduced her. Our next guest uncovered what appears to be a systematic effort by one of the country's largest airlines to specifically target passengers traveling to important family events for bumping from overbooked flights. She's here to share her story and the evidence she's collected. Lisa took a deep breath and began speaking. 3 months ago, I was bumped from a flight to my sister's wedding despite having a confirmed reservation and checking in on time. What I discovered afterward shocked me, and it should shock everyone who flies. By that evening, an interview had gone viral. #airline bumping was trending on social media platforms. Other news outlets were calling for statements from the airline and the Department of Transportation. Former passengers were coming forward with their own stories that matched the pattern Lisa had identified. The airline issued a brief statement claiming their seating policies were in line with industry standards and that they were reviewing the allegations. But the damage was done. Their stock price dropped 7% by market close the next day. Lisa's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, other affected passengers, and even current airline employees who wanted to share their own experiences with the system. What had started as one ruined trip to a wedding was growing into something much bigger than she had ever imagined. A week after Lisa's television appearance, the airline's CEO called an emergency press conference. Flanked by nervous-looking executives, he announced an internal review of their booking policies. Lisa watched the broadcast from her living room, scoffing at the careful wording. "We take these allegations very seriously," the CEO said with practiced concern. "If any of our procedures have unintentionally impacted our valued customers, we will make immediate changes." "Unintentionally?" Lisa said to her empty room. "They designed the system deliberately." Her phone buzzed with a text from the consumer rights attorney. "They're scared. Want to meet tomorrow." The next day, in the attorney's office, Lisa found not just her lawyer, but 3 other legal experts and a representative from the Department of Transportation. "Your story has opened quite a can of worms," the DOT representative explained. "We've received over 2,000 complaints in the past 5 days from passengers with similar experiences across multiple airlines. This appears to be an industry-wide practice." Lisa's jaw dropped. "All the airlines are doing this?" The attorney nodded. "Different systems with different names, but the same basic concept, and likely the same legal problems. The DOT has launched a formal investigation." "So what happens now?" Lisa asked. "We've filed the class action lawsuit, naming you as the lead plaintiff along with 7 others. But there's something else." The attorney slid a document across the table. "The airline wants to discuss a settlement." Lisa looked down at the paper. "They want to settle already. We just filed. The negative publicity is killing them. Bookings are down 23% since your story broke. Their stock has dropped nearly 15% in a week. They're hemorrhaging money every day this stays in the news." Lisa scanned the document, which outlined a confidential settlement offer of $5,000 to her personally, plus a promise to review their policies. "This is insulting," Lisa said, pushing the paper back. They think they can pay me off with $5,000 in vague promises. We expected that response, the attorney said with a smile, which is why we've prepared a counteroffer. The counter-proposal demanded $10 million in compensation for affected passengers, a complete overhaul of the bumping algorithm with transparency requirements, and the creation of an independent passenger advocacy office within the airline. 3 days later, the airline's attorneys requested a meeting. Lisa sat nervously at the massive conference table, feeling out of place among the suits and legal pads. An airline executive cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, we appreciate your concerns, but your demands are simply not feasible. The algorithm is proprietary technology that gives us a competitive advantage." Lisa leaned forward. "A competitive advantage that deliberately ruins important days for your customers? Is that really the position you want to take publicly?" The airline's lead attorney jumped in. "We're prepared to increase our offer to $50,000 personally to you and $1 million to be distributed among affected passengers." The DOT representative, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "I should mention that our investigation is finding potential violations of federal disclosure requirements that could result in substantial fines." The room fell silent. The airline executives whispered among themselves before their attorney spoke again. "We may be able to meet you halfway on the financial compensation and policy changes, but the passenger advocacy office is off the table." Lisa's attorney placed a hand on her arm, but she shook it off. "Let me be clear," Lisa said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This isn't about money for me. This is about fixing a broken system. The advocacy office is non-negotiable." She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of printed emails. "These are messages from people who missed funerals of loved ones, births of their children, and last chances to say goodbye to dying parents because your algorithm decided their life events weren't as important as business travelers' meetings." She placed the papers on the table. "I'm ready to read every single one of these stories to the media if necessary. Are you prepared for that?" The airline's CEO, who had been silently watching from the end of the table, finally spoke. "That won't be necessary. Let's discuss the details of this advocacy office you're proposing." As Lisa outlined her vision, she caught her attorney giving her a subtle thumbs up. The tide was turning. For the first time since being denied her seat nearly 2 months ago, Lisa felt something new, the sweet taste of victory. 6 months after that fateful day when Lisa was bumped from her flight, she stood in front of a crowded press conference. Camera flashes popped as she approached the podium, flanked by her attorney, the DOT representative, and surprisingly, the airline's CEO. "Today marks a new chapter in passenger rights," Lisa began, her voice clear and confident. "I'm pleased to announce that we've reached a settlement that will change how airlines handle overbooking forever." The final agreement was far more sweeping than anyone had expected. The airline would pay $48 million to a fund for passengers who had been involuntarily bumped over the past 5 years. They would completely redesign their bumping algorithm with oversight from an independent auditor. Most importantly, they would establish the passenger advocacy office that Lisa had demanded, staffed by consumer representatives rather than airline employees. After the official statements, reporters shouted questions. "Lisa, did you ever imagine your missed flight would lead to this?" one called out. She thought for a moment before answering. "Never. I just wanted to make it to my sister's wedding. But when I realized this wasn't just happening to me, I couldn't look away." "And what does your sister think about all this?" another reporter asked. Lisa laughed. She says being bumped from that flight was the best thing that ever happened, but not to tell her husband that. The room erupted in laughter, breaking the formal atmosphere. Later that evening, Lisa sat with her attorney, celebrating with a glass of champagne. "You know this is going to change the entire industry, right?" the attorney said. 2 other major airlines have already announced they're revising their policies before they get sued too. Lisa nodded, still processing the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. "I keep thinking about all those people who will make it to their important moments now. The graduations, the weddings, the chance to say goodbye to loved ones." Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Just saw you on the news again. So proud of you." Lisa smiled at the message. Her sister's wedding photos had eventually turned out beautifully, even with Lisa arriving at the last minute in borrowed clothes. In one of her favorites, the bride was whispering something in Lisa's ear that had made them both laugh until they cried. "At least you'll have a good story to tell," her sister had said. She hadn't known just how good that story would become. 3 weeks later, Lisa stood nervously in the newly opened passenger advocacy office on the top floor of the airline's headquarters. The CEO had just finished cutting the ribbon, and now all eyes were on her. "When the airline first approached me about heading this office, I thought they were joking," Lisa told the assembled crowd. "I was their biggest critic, but that's exactly why this will work. This office will have real independence and real power to help passengers." She had taken a leave of absence from her marketing job to get the advocacy office up and running. The airline had agreed to fund it for at least 5 years, with options to renew based on performance metrics tied to customer satisfaction rather than company profits. On her new desk sat a framed copy of her original boarding pass, the one that had started it all, alongside photos of the many passengers who had shared their stories with her. Their experiences would guide the office's work going forward. As the ceremony ended and people began to mingle, an elderly woman approached Lisa with tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, clasping Lisa's hand. "Last year, I missed my grandson's college graduation when I got bumped from my flight. I was heartbroken. What you've done means so many others won't have that experience." Lisa squeezed the woman's hand. "That's exactly why we fought so hard." As she looked around the new office, her office, Lisa felt a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. What had begun as one of the worst days of her life had transformed into something powerful and meaningful. Sometimes, Lisa thought, the most important journeys start with a flight that never takes off.